Welcome to Dreamers to Leaders, Keeping It Real with Melody podcast. Melody is a born dreamer who started from being a flight attendant and worked her way up into now a tech fashion trendsetter, thought leader, and seasoned entrepreneur in multiple successful ventures. This podcast is for the awakened dreamer. Industry icons will share their humble beginnings up to the leaders they are today. Let's all learn and be inspired. Together, we can all prosper.
Hello and welcome to the Dreamers to Leaders podcast. It's the podcast for the dreamers, but more importantly, the doers. I'm your host, Melody. For those of you who want to learn more about financial planning essentials, this episode is for you. Joining us here today is Debra Miller. She is a trusted financial service representative who also specializes in insurance as well as banking. Quick disclaimer here. Opinions shared in this episode are for general information purposes only, and it's not intended for specific product advice or recommendation. With that said, let's begin. Hi, Debra.
Hi, Melody. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you in the show. Well, let's kick it off by giving some advice to simplify how it is for one who wants to start investing. What would be your advice for those who want to start planning and start saving?
Well, that's a great question. And especially today when we're in the crisis that we're in, people are concerned. Things are uncertain, right? So let's not let the crisis decide if we're going to invest or not, right? I think you need to focus on, are you ready to be an investor? That's the first thing we need to focus on. And secondly, how do we do that? Well, first we look at our financial foundation, right? We need to make sure that we have 6 to 8 months of a safety net. And if you don't, then that's what we want to do. We want to focus on getting you a 6 to 8 month safety net, and then take that safety net and don't touch it. It's your emergency. And then secondly, take that money and you get to start your investing experience. But still keep giving a little bit to your savings account once you start your investing experience. Don't stop.
So step one, make sure that you have that safety net, as you said, which is your reserve.
Like 6 to 8 months. Yeah.
8 months of reserve before you dabble into anything, right?
That's correct. Yeah, especially in these uncertain times. If you don't have the 6 to 8 months, you don't want your money going into the market right now. So we need to get you financially stable before we start moving into investing. And then we can have fun. Then we can have fun and start investing once you get there.
Right. So with regards to having fun, is there a right mindset in terms of, in terms of those that would even consider looking at investing?
Yeah. That's a great question. First, I want to start off with just some of the common things that people make mistakes when they're about to invest. So let's go over some common things that people make mistakes over. Okay. First of all, reacting emotional in downward markets. Okay. We saw this in 2007. We were in a bullish market. And then in 2008, we had a financial crisis. And people panicked, right? And they pulled all their money out of the market. They got very, very scared with those uncertain times like we're in right now. So my advice is for an investor, try to stay calm during the storm, right? And ride through the ups and downs of the stages. Don't be emotional. Don't make quick decisions.
So brace yourself, know that it's going to have its ups and downs, right?
Right.
Not to bail yourself out when the going gets tough. So just kind of hold on and know that it somehow corrects itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's remind ourselves that a downward market has a place for investing as well as an upward market, right? We have to remember that. These are part of the processes of being invested, right?
And with regards to 2020, so you mentioned the 2008, housing bubble. Now with this with 2020 being a wild card, right? Creating massive havoc economically and globally. What do you say to people to kind of pacify them or give them a little bit of reassurance, or just blanketly, what do you say for people that are just afraid?
Just afraid. Well, I say that the first thing I would say in what is a good investor? One of the best characteristics is not being knowledgeable, right? Understanding how the market works, right? And the more we know, the better things work out. So really just working with a specialist that can help you through those, your trying times or your concerns, and really explain how the market works and how a downward markets process is supposed to happen, and also an upward markets process. So if we don't go through these stages, then we'll never see this amazing return on investments. Now, market history can't repeat itself, right? We have no guarantees, right? We can just educate ourselves on how the market works and what it's done in the past history.
And let me jump in on that, educating yourself. I think it was Benjamin Franklin that said, investment in knowledge gives you the best return, right? So
Right.
yes, you're absolutely right on that. Before anything, you gotta invest in knowledge and educating yourself with all the options out there. So
Yeah. And also understanding, like, that's why you can either do self-educating, right? Because there's a lot of investors today that they're going on, they're getting advice from social media, from chat rooms, right? This is how they're doing it. But just knowing the common mistakes is one. And then once you know the common mistakes, putting a plan together that's right for you, that's particular to your needs.
mm-hmm. So you mentioned common mistakes. Are there 3 top that you have in mind that that you've seen with your clients and and observed with investors out there? Are there common pitfalls that you've noticed?
Yeah. There's the one that I just mentioned, right? Don't be emotional and react in downward markets. Got to be calm through the storm. And then another one is market timing. People try to time the market, right? And so when I say timing the market, when there's a recession, there's so much uncertain times, right? And even the most experienced investors have a hard time stomaching a down equity and bond market, right? And in a volatile market like that, it's really hard to know like when to jump in and when to jump out, right? Right. I mean, it would be ideal. We all want to do market timing. It'd be ideal if we could get out of the market before it crashed and then get back in the market before it plummetes. But that's not the reality of it, right? The disadvantage of trying to time the market is that you have to be in the market constantly. It's constant. And so following the trends, the day-to-day trends, is a lot of work for people, for investors, right? So I would recommend really looking at long-term and just staying in through the ups and downs. Don't make quick movements in short positions.
Mm-hmm. So first is not be emotional, right? Second is not time the market. And third is long-term. I think you said something about invest long-term. Because professionally, unless you're a day trader, you can't.
Right, exactly. Right. It's a lot of work. And the last one is people invest and they don't have a plan. Like we saw a lot of this it's called herd investing. We saw it in 2020, a lot of it. Going to social media, hearing the chat room, talking to their neighbor, talking to their friend. Oh, this investment worked for them, so they assume it's going to work for themselves, right? And those are just some of the common mistakes. Now, I think to avoid those or help the people that are insecure, right? There's steps that we can take to make you calm through these storms. Okay. Right. So the first one is we have to do a fact finder, right? And if you're working with someone, or you, at least you do it yourself if you're going to self-invest, but you have to do a fact finder. And what the fact finder does is it's going to make us look at our financial objectives. Okay. It's going to tell us our risk tolerance. What can we put up with? What are we going to be able to sleep with at night? And then it's going to tell us our time horizon. You know, what do you expect? Do you have 5 years? Do you have 10 years? Do you have 20 years? And so when I'm working with people, once I get those factors, I'll do a calculator. I'll either do it based on present value or future value, right? And the time frame, how long we have. And that's going to give the client the exact like formula of what they have to commit to every month, right? They have to save this month to make this much. So we work it backwards.
So I think that's dollar cost averaging, right? Which is an investment strategy where people would periodically put a certain amount of money, it's monthly or quarterly or what have you. So you're not timing the market because you really can't.
No, you can't.
No
Yeah.
one has a crystal ball, right?
Right. And I think you just have to have come in with the characteristics of like being a goal setter, right? Sticking to your goals, right? Getting knowledgeable, understanding these ups and downs can be a good thing, not a bad thing, not a panic, right? Thinking in terms of risk versus return, right? So you gotta understand how those work together in the investment world. Viewing your losses as an education, right? Instead of, thinking it's the end of the world. No, you just learned something, it's just something we learned from. And we rebalance and we reposition our portfolio from wherever we're at.
Yeah. I like what you said about looking at the market and having a different perspective when there's the lows. Because, for a lot, knowing that it's kind of dipping and
right.
The value is low is when you kind of put more in and you get more shares.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's the best part of a downward market. And when you're dollar cost averaging, right, every month, stay committed, right? 3 things that I think of is start early, think long term, invest regularly, and make it automatic, just like paying your mortgage or your rent.
Right. And then you mentioned about, kind of being emotional. I think with anything, whether it's investing, making business decision, even dealing with family or any type of relationship, if you allow just the emotion to prevail, then usually you're not taking all the equation into consideration.
I think not just learning investing, but knowing what characteristics you have to have. Like preparing yourself, teaching yourself these characteristics to help you understand the anxiety that it can be sometimes in the market when it's a downward market.
And then you mentioned about investing early. That I think is key for a lot of people. As they say, it's better to the best time to start is yesterday, right? And the next best is today. So it's not timing the market, but the time in the market is what we all, regardless of your proficiency as an investor, is really having that time in the market, so then you can ride the ups
that compound interest, right? That compound interest, that time in the market.
Exactly, that the compound interest, and then it averages out, in the end, long term, for those who.
Well, and also, like we said, in a downward market, people want to panic, like they did in 2008. They panicked, they got out, but they lost a huge amount of opportunity for potential savings, right? Because they jumped out. In that, when you're in that down market, like you said, you're buying more shares. So when that market comes back, you're going in with maybe triple, right? And that's how our compound interest works.
So you also touched on that herd mentality, right? And a lot of people when they and I think it was Warren Buffett that said, when people are getting greedy, that's when you get scared, right?
Right.
And when people are kind of complacent and whatnot, that's kind of when you react differently. So when people
Right.
are all out on something, you step back and you pause. What really is the story
Mhm.
here, right? And again, it boils down to not being irrational and emotional when it comes to investing.
Yeah, and if you are anxiety people, I found a lot of people, they don't sit back and commit to like quarterly or 6-month or annual reviews. Sit back down, revisit your financial objective, right? And another common mistake is they don't rebalance. They don't go back and rebalance. Like when you're 20 years old, it's very different when you're 50 years old, right? And I found like a lot of people started their investment, maybe their retirement when they were 20, and they never change. They never change their portfolio. They just keep feeding it and they just let it ride. And they really just don't analyze to make sure, hey, is it working for me right now? Is it working the way I want it to work? Right?
Very, very good point, Deborah. So it's looking at the risk tolerance of the investor, looking at time horizon. Someone who is 55 years old versus a 25-year-old would completely have a different type of portfolio allocation. And then doing that portfolio rebalancing. Good point.
Yeah. And the closer you get to retirement, right? Maybe the more conservative we get. We're a lot more riskier sometimes in our 20s versus.
So you're right on. It's not a cookie cutter type of a thing. It
Right.
truly depends, and it needs to be tailored to each person's situations, circumstances, risk tolerance, and all that good stuff. So
And and attitude. It's all about your attitude.
it's all about that. It's all about
Yeah,
the attitude, the mindset, right?
that's right. That's right.
And the stomach for change, right?
Right, right.
And I
Yeah,
think
people don't like change, right? We don't like change. Some people don't like change. It upsets them, right?
And I think more so in investing and investment, change is truly what is constant, right? In life, it is, but gotta really know that with investing, change is really a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, very much. Part of that
So
acceptability.
let's shift gears and talk about small business owners. We have a
Okay.
lot of audience out there who maybe are starting their own business or have owned their shop, their small business for a while. Unlike most employees that have maybe the safety net or that group retirement plan that's being sponsored by uh, large corporations or their company,
Mhm.
a lot of small business owners, it's truly up to them to do something about saving and planning for their retirement. Are there areas of financial investment that are usually overlooked by small business owners that perhaps
Definitely.
they
Definitely. So they did a survey, and out of the small business owners, about 35% don't have a retirement plan set in place.
I thought it would be more.
I did too, right? But I was looking at it. It said 35. It's just one research, right? We have a bunch of different research, but it's just one research. And so the biggest reason they said they didn't have a retirement plan was because I don't make enough money. My business doesn't make enough profit, right? So consider business owners, consider working with a specialist, right? Showing them your balance sheet, right? And maybe they're going to find areas where you're overspending in certain areas that you're not supposed to be. The most common one, which I thought was great, is that the business owner pays himself way too much money, more money than he needs to live on, right? So that's where a specialist can come in and say, look, well, we can do it this way and that way. And maybe instead of paying yourself this much, why don't we reduce your taxes, right? Why don't we reduce it by starting a retirement plan? And not only lowering your tax benefit on the business side, but also on your personal side.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So having that plan not only helps them, but if they set it up where it's non-discriminatory, where anyone perhaps in their key employees, let's say their key employees can also benefit from what they set up, then they also help, with the bottom line of retention, of having, good retention of key employees, right?
That's right. Yeah. And it attracts new employees, right? And it retains your employees. But
good point. Yes. Uh-huh.
Right. But
so the benefit is having something for themselves, tax benefit for themselves, attraction of especially, as a business owner, it truly is a challenge to attract good talent. It is so competitive.
It's so
there.
It is one of our hardest things as a business owner, right? To find key employees.
And more so, I think for small business owners, our message or the ads that we put out there sometimes could get drowned with obviously the bigger voice, with a bigger marketing dollar or bigger advertising dollar to attract the same talent, right? So having a plan in place is not only good for them, but definitely for their business, for the bottom line for the business.
Yeah, and I think that the tax benefit is overlooked of how much they can save. Like if they look at the whole picture and you sit down with a specialist and they show you like, look, if you do this, we're going to save 15% more. You're going to go 50% lower on your tax bracket, business and personal. Like you can find the money, but you just have to work through. You have to go through and get all the right statements and information you share with your specialist. And another thing is, I think everyone just thinks there's one kind of business retirement, like there's one like 401k and that's all there is, but there's not. There's so many plans out there that we can cater it to a person's budget. It doesn't have to be overwhelmingly costly. It could be very small. Like you said, we can just put key employees in there, right?
A very good point, Deborah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that's also one of the reasons why business owners are intentionally overlooking it because they're thinking that it takes or it costs a lot to have this plan in place. But as you said, there are different programs and different plans that could be customized based on needs, budget, and comfort, right?
Right. And just that educating and not make people think it's so financially overwhelming to do it. A lot of them, I'm not going to be able to afford it, but you just have to work with someone and work through. Like I said, it's there, the money's there, or if it's not there, then we work out a plan to get there.
Right. So you being a financial service representative, what has been your why? What prompted you to specialize in this area?
Oh, well, I'm second generation. So I was raised in the business. My mom was a bookkeeper. So my first words were debit and credit. Right?
Wow.
I think I've been conditioned since my dad was an estate planner. So my mom was the bookkeeper, did all the books, and my dad sold all the estates, like estate planning. So I've been raised that way, but really I was just intrigued because I'll just say a personal is that, my dad taught me from a young age, right? Pay yourself before you pay your bills. He taught me from a young, just to instill it in me. Okay. And I just started, I remember when I got my first job, and I was 18 when I could open a mutual fund, right? But I also did another policy that paid like around 4%. It was a life product, but I just did $50 and $50. I mean, back then I didn't make a lot of money, right? And I just committed to it since I was like 18 and on. And then every year I just did small steps. I'm going to increase it by $10. So instead of doing 50, I moved it to 60 the next year. And then the next year I moved it to 70. And then I just committed to that. And so after about, what was it? I was 18. When I was 28, I had quite a nice portfolio because of just how I was taught and the conditions that I committed to, right? Mm-hmm. And I just loved it. And I saw that so many people, I teach at high schools. I teach in economics at high schools to all these students. So many students don't know how to save, and they don't know what to do with their money and how they're going to build some kind of net worth. So I just saw that the committing to the few and with compound interest and time in, how it just paid off for me. And just the love for educating people that don't really know how to save. It's hard for them to save, and building a plan for them so we can see success at the end of the road.
Right. So speaking of paying yourself first, I think that's one of the main things that, that would be a good nugget especially for the younger folks, those that are making their first dollar or their first paycheck before
Right.
they splurge on something. I think that is really truly a golden nugget. Pay yourself first. Don't use the whole dollar that you got to spend it, especially for non-essentials, right? So
Right.
First, pay yourself, and also for those that are new in the country, so the immigrants.
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden, they're here in the United States, and they see that they could just fill out an application and they could get a brand new car, or they go to Nordstrom or Macy's or what have you, and it's easy to be given a credit card to shop, and before you know it, your debts are here and you're making too much. So
Right.
I agree with you, and that's a very good piece of advice growing up that your parents have taught you, and that you acted on. Because it's one thing to tell your kids, and kids just kind of hearing it on one ear and letting it go the other, but you actually implemented it.
So, and I made, some people, saving is a weakness, right? You have to make your weaknesses your strength. It was never one of my weaknesses, but I've seen a lot of people that saving is hard for them, and we have to make our weaknesses our strength, right?
And I think it's hard because of discipline. So I think instilling that discipline that, truly you gotta really pay yourself first. And it doesn't have to be
overwhelming.
Right. And I think they say if it's just maybe 10% or 20% or whatever percentage that you can commit to and be disciplined in putting aside, will pay so much dividends for you in the long run, right?
Yeah, and I think the if I just think of 3 financial tips, right? 3 financial tips that I like to tell my clients. 1, stick to a budget. We got to stick to a budget. A lot of people don't know, right? Don't sit down and do a budget, but let's stick to a budget so we don't get, like you said, our debts are up here. Our savings, our assets are down here, right?
Right.
So stick to a budget. And I recommend 20% of your annual salary to go to financial priorities on that side of the sheet. 20%. But I mean, anyone, if you can't do 20%, any amount is better than no amount.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
And then 30% of your annual salary can go to life spending, whatever, your entertainment, right? But for people that haven't invested or they think it's overwhelming, really all you have to do is just try adjusting one thing a month, right? Like, don't go out to dinner one time a month. That's $60. You can start investing for as little as $60 a month. And that just took one thing that you gave up for the month. Just one.
Right.
Right?
I agree. And hey, you know what? How much is it to have a cup of Starbucks a day, right?
Exactly.
And people have no problem paying $5, now $6 to.
I think it's $8 now, isn't it?
It's crazy. It's insane. Okay,
Right.
but people are okay to pay that much in terms of a cup of coffee, right? But really, all it takes is maybe sacrificing a few days without that and putting it in some sort of investment, for them, right?
Yeah, very simple, not overwhelming. They just commit to one thing.
Commit to one. Exactly. I like that. So Deborah, maybe to wrap it up,
Yeah.
If there are those that are wanting to do it themselves, so maybe is there?
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe is there maybe online calculator or simple formula that they need to know, just so they have an idea on where they are, number one, and then so whatever resource that perhaps are available. So basically, how can one DIY their financial planning?
Well, I think that's if they're gonna do it themselves, right? I think the biggest thing, like I said, is knowledge. So go do your research. Don't just listen to your neighbor or a chat room. Go do your research. Learn how to read a prospectus, right? Learn how to look at the performance. Learn how to look at the performance of the company for the last 10, 20, 30 years, right? Go learn what beta is so you can see, oh, how volatile is this? Is this work for my risk tolerance, right? Yeah. So I think that part and knowing how many fees you're paying, how much does it cost annually, and how much commission is going out and taking away from that investment. I think that's key, really just learning.
I agree. So learning and looking at options that are available out there, looking at their performance, the historical return, and the fees. Because some, yes, performance could be there, but the fees are double than perhaps another type of a service provider that could also provide the same performance or have historical performance that are somehow the same, but yet the fees are more reasonable. So looking at the options.
And just the overall return of the company too, to know how to read that, to look at if you're doing a particular stock, because a lot of the herd investing is buying one stock.
Right.
It's not a portfolio, right? It's not a huge portfolio with a bunch of mutual funds in there. It's one particular stock. So they could look really good on paper, but their market price might be terrible. Like, just know how to read that, right? And also knowing what your choices are. Like, what's a small cap? Can they answer what a small cap is? What is the S&P 500, right? What does bonds mean? What kind of bond options do we have? Knowing, what's out there and what's available instead of just picking or following, right? Understanding.
I think that's important, and you brought up a good point. A lot of the terms that are basic, maybe basic for those that are in the industry, but familiarizing oneself in those terms so then they could understand more and be in an informed position to make that decision for themselves. So may it be just the usual funds that are out there, the small cap, the large cap, the S&P 500, having those lingos and knowing.
Yeah, and understanding is big, and it can really help you build a portfolio that works for your needs, your risk tolerance. So you're going to be calm through the storm. You're going to be calm. Yeah. I mean, that's what I did when I teach at high school. That's the first thing I go over is, what is a small cap? Do you guys even know looking at a small cap, what that means? What's a large cap, right?
And it has nothing to do with what you put on your head, right?
No, it's not.
But truly, one has to embrace knowing those are essential in order
Right.
to have, to be in the market. You have to know what are the options that are out there.
Yeah.
You have to walk the talk
and do the walk.
Walk the walk and talk the talk. But you know what? Especially in this crisis, information like this, even if it's just a reminder, really, truly,
Right.
that
Right.
You got to pay yourself first. I mean, that's first and foremost before you dive in and get your branded watch or your branded purse, which is people can have 3 or 4 different types of thousands of dollar purses and whatnot, yet nothing on their savings, right? So first, really take care of you, and if it means just a little bit of a portion of what you take home, I think is truly key. So Debra, all the nuggets that you shared, I'm sure 1 or 2 of our listeners would find it really valuable. Thank you, Debra, for gracing our show and giving your time and your valuable nuggets to our audience.
Oh, thank you, Melody.
Wishing you continued success. Stay well.